We'll turn our attention now to Brother Don Kramer as he concludes with a final talk.
Very nice to be with you, brothers and sisters. Nancy and I appreciate the invitation to be here with your congregation today. And I thought we'd spend a little bit of time discussing not just the work I do at Bethel, but how we all benefit from the provisions of Jehovah's organization. At the conclusion, if we have a little bit of time, perhaps you have a question about something that's happening at Bethel or someone you want to know about there, there's an opportunity to comment on that. The position we have as Jehovah's people has really come to be a comfortable one. We know what Jehovah's will is. We've learned His laws. We have constant reminders at our conventions and watchtower studies like today what Jehovah expects of us. As long as we come close to understanding that, we have a reasonable assurance that we fit in with the congregation, we can be happy. We know God's laws. We're not afraid there's going to be some surprise thing that we neglected that is all of a sudden going to disqualify us from pleasing God. No, we're comfortable. We stand before Him, imperfect, but understanding what His requirements are. And some of His requirements are more difficult for us to figure out than others. The challenging one has been the matter of blood. I work in hospital information services in Brooklyn. My wife's a proofreader. She works in the writing department. But we get a lot of calls from around the world and congregations in this country requesting help on this matter of blood. The governing body has worked hard over the years trying to help us to understand what it is that we need to do. As a consequence, we've really come to the point that's described in Psalm 26 that David arrived at after a period of years in association with the laws of God. He said in Psalm 26, verse 11 and 12, "As for me, in my integrity I shall walk. O redeem me and show me favor. My own foot will certainly stand on a level place. Among the congregated throngs I shall bless Jehovah." So in this level position where we feel secure, we feel stable, not easily upset, this is our position within the Christian congregation. And where we need help with a particular law or how to conform our lives to it, the governing body has the responsibility to provide us with assistance, with direction. And so we thoroughly examine the laws of God in all the different areas. And over a period of a number of years, God's law in reference to blood has been examined. We've had material to study it carefully. And as a consequence, we've come to understand a great deal about it. Are all of our questions answered? No, I don't think so. It's a difficult subject. And because of modern medical science and what they have done, it's created challenges that didn't exist before. And those challenges then, in turn, are addressed. For example, your November Kingdom Ministry contained material. The insert in there was very helpful, did you not feel? In reference to making a decision based on understanding, not just on whim, but on understanding. Is it enough? Perhaps not, but it's what we have to work with. Would you like to know more? Perhaps, but you have what I have. We have material from the faithful slave that helps us to understand. Now, beyond that, the organization has developed a system over a period of, 18 years now, that's designed to be of assistance to us to help us keep our integrity under pressure. And the medical community has the capability to provide pressure for us to conform to the way they have been trained. And as a consequence, it's created problems over the years. So 18 years ago, the governing body, after a pilot program in Canada, set up hospital information services. And that hospital information services is represented in all the 110 branches, I think, by a hospital information desk. And they manage, as we do in Brooklyn, the hospital liaison committees here and in their countries. These hospital liaison committees have been designed to provide information to the medical community and to help you understand how they function and just to build a bridge, because there have been serious problems in years gone by, and most of it involved miscommunication, and it's fixed to a large extent by communication. So they've used publications to help the medical community. I assume because you have 3 hospital liaison committee members in your congregation, you've all seen Family Care Book. Is that right, Brother Street? If sometime they want to show you, they can lay out patients that they use. There's nothing secret about them. The one called Family Care has been used. It's not kind of gone into disuse now because it's older, but it's a beautiful publication. I think we put out about 60,000 copies of it in a number of languages. Very beautiful publication. And in addition to that, normally I bring one with me, but the material that we provide for the medical community is very nicely done. It is beautiful. And there's materials continuing to be developed that is an assistance to them based on the specialties. There are certain specialties in the medical field where we typically have problems in reference to blood, in reference to surgery, in reference to GI bleeds, in reference to obstetrics and gynecology, and also the other one has to do with trauma and ICU care. Extensive work, years of work have gone into publishing materials specifically on these subjects. And if you haven't seen them all, ask Brother Street for illustration, or the other 2 HLC members, they can lay them out sometime for you, because they are impressive. They don't represent religious material, but they represent serious medical research that we gathered. It's not that Hospital Information Services is doing the research necessarily. We're just building on what is out there and accumulating the material from respected medical journals and from doctors around the world into a very focused setting to where a doctor can look at it and say, I can do that. And we constantly watch lives being saved as a result. It happens all the time. We watch it happening. And doctors who use them are very quick to point out the value of these materials. So if you haven't seen them, make a little noise. And perhaps you can see. It doesn't mean he's going to give them to you because they won't help you. They are totally medically oriented. But it's nice to see them, I think. Something else that's done in order to facilitate contact with the medical community is we attend medical conferences, some of them large, some small. 2 brothers from our office were just in Kuala Lumpur at a OBGYN conference that had wasn't that big, there were only 6,000 doctors, but they were from a couple of 100 different countries, I think. They take along a booth that some of you may have seen. I think it was in our publications one time before. We had 14 or 15 of these booths that we put into the medical conference environment when we were there. And we can put out a lot of material. I think they put out about 2,500 copies of a kit that you'll see if you have it eventually there that is very welcomed by doctors. It is not a challenge to go to these conferences and answer the questions of doctors and to be present there. It really, when it first started out, it would be a scary experience, but it hasn't proved to be that way. Even in a challenging setting. For example, a couple of years ago, I was asked to attend a conference of 12,000 blood bankers. Now, that didn't hit me right. It would seem like, why are we there? Particularly when we set up our large booth with all our materials, and it's right next to the brand new bloodmobile. And so they all come down excited about their bloodmobile, and they look at our sign, Medical Alternatives to Blood Transfusion. They said, what are you trying to do? Put us out of business? I said, no, you've got a few years left. It's all right. But really, we put out well over 1,000 pieces of serious material to these blood bankers. Why were they interested? Why, after the conference, did they take the material, put it out into their publications? Why did they invite HLC members all over the country to speak at their blood banks? Why did they invite us to go to the Red Cross and speak to the Red Cross in New York and other Red Cross associations across the country? Why? Because they love God? No. They know the problems. They know and are very frightened of what they see in the future for blood. They're aware of the problems that have happened in the past. They know that the blood supply in this country is not sufficient. In the Northeast, a good bit of blood is already imported from England on a regular basis and from other parts of Europe. They're very concerned about the costs and the future, pathogens that may be in the blood supply, and very concerned about that. As a consequence, they're interested in what we have figured out, ways to conserve blood, ways to avoid using it. So that's why they're interested. Totally a business arrangement. And they're also concerned about the diseases. Now, the diseases that can be passed in blood, we used to talk about somewhat. The hospital liaison committees did, but people are aware of that. And besides, that's not the scriptural reason why we avoid blood anyhow. It's totally a scriptural matter. And because if blood is perfectly safe, we still wouldn't take it. So that's not the reason we don't take it. It's a scriptural matter. But the hospital liaison committees have been working hard over the years to provide information, and it's working. It is working tremendously. I've only worked in the department for about 12 years now, but I've seen a tremendous difference within the medical profession, their viewpoint of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's almost impossible to attend a medical conference, and there are medical conferences going on all over the world all the time, where Jehovah's Witnesses are not mentioned in a favorable way, as having been those that have pioneered the development of alternatives and forcing the medical profession into looking for alternatives to using blood. As the medical community has adjusted, perhaps it's also wise for us to adjust. Now, I grew up one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and so I'm well aware that within the witness community, there's a bias against the medical profession. It doesn't take long for conversations that go on to turn to the medical profession and start taking them down. There are many fine people within the medical profession, many of them dedicated to helping individuals, even us, toward good health. And so it's important that when we go to a doctor that we respect his position or her position as a doctor, that they're trying to help us. Particularly in the pediatric setting, where doctors do not have the option of not giving a transfusion. The law requires they give a transfusion if the life of the child is threatened. Now, sometimes there are alternatives to that. Maybe another doctor knows more than they know and can do it, but that's not always possible to put these things together, or the equipment or the pharmaceuticals involved. So let's be careful that we don't get unduly upset with someone who's following the law. Now, years gone by, we were looking for doctors who would provide care without the use of blood. And now a doctor, if you go to a doctor and the doctor says, I will respect your wishes. You do not want blood, I understand. I'll respect your wishes. That's not enough. That's the law. He's merely acting as a citizen who's obeying the law. Now, he may be a good doctor, I don't know. But if he just says, I'll respect your wishes, accept that. A hospital liaison committee looks for doctors that have much, much more than that, and they're out there. What you want is a doctor who not only will obey the law, but also knows the alternatives and regularly uses the alternatives and is interested in blood conservation. That's a must when you're looking for a doctor to treat you. So in years gone by, we were quite happy. The doctor said, I won't give blood. Oh, fine, thank you very much. But the profession is far, far beyond that. Hospital liaison committees all over the world are reviewing the list they've had of doctors to be certain that the doctors they have on the list are ones that they know, ones that have a high degree of training and experience in treating witness patients. So when you have a medical problem, it's certainly wise, and you've got 3, I guess, in your congregation on the HLC, ask them questions. If you're in a congregation that doesn't have hospital liaison committee members, as most are, have your elders put you in touch with the hospital liaison committee so that direction can be provided in the selection of the doctor. All too often, and I'll talk about it in a little bit, all too often that does not happen. And as a consequence, serious, serious problems can result. The network that is out there, the capacity for us to provide help within the hospital liaison committee network is awesome. It's worldwide. Very often individuals who have an accident or traveling in another country, even a very distant, remote country, even in that setting, very often before they get to a hospital, perhaps even in another country, the hospital liaison committee is there ready to help. Some years ago I was in the office working on a circuit assembly part for the next day. It was close to midnight. I was sitting at my computer. And I just typed in something about a worldwide organization of elders designed to help. And as I was typing it in, I heard the fax machine go off. So I went out to the fax machine and I picked this up. And it says, from Belgium, Hospital Information Desk, we cannot reach you by phone. Please call Belgium branch. Well, it would have been about 4 in the morning, perhaps 5 in the morning over there. But I called, and it turned out that a little boy had fallen a couple of stories in his apartment somehow, fallen down and was badly injured. The sister was single, and she didn't know what to do. She called the hospital liaison committee immediately there, took the child to the hospital, but they didn't know how to treat him. He was in bad shape, and so they woke up the branch office, and the branch office did not know exactly what to do, so they in fact were contacting us. I immediately contacted a brother in the office who knew much more than I did about the matter, who in turn contacted the Belgium branch. I went back to my computer and looked on it, a worldwide network of elders designed to help, and this kind of thing goes on all the time. It's true we get less emergency calls than we used to. We're able to sleep through an entire night sometimes now. It didn't used to be that way. We used to get awakened several times during the night, but the hospital liaison committees are much more effective in their use of the tools that have been provided. The doctors are more capable. There are more and better pharmaceuticals out there that can provide assistance as well. So our degree of emergencies and the things we have to do during the night are lessened, and we're very glad of that. However, you can take all of that work. We have close to 10,000 hospital liaison committee members around the world, just a little over 1,000 in this country, 123 hospital liaison committees in this country. You can take all that work and basically make it of no effect. How? By not filling out verbal power of attorney your health care document. Now, I know the challenge of filling them out. I'm well aware of that. But brothers, find some way to get enough help that you can fill them out. It's true, the chances of your needing it are small, but they're real. They do happen. Accidents happen. Sicknesses develop, sometimes very quickly. And a person doesn't have a chance to make up for what they haven't done. So filling out that power of attorney, whatever it's called in this state, is vital. It is seriously important. It's the direction we've received from a faithful organization in trying to help us. When it doesn't, when it's not done, or when we've not made good decisions, or we've not checked with the hospital liaison committee before selecting a doctor, sad stories can result. They're very frustrating to us, frankly. I was awakened at midnight a couple of years ago by a hospital liaison committee member, all excited, concerned, upset, because he'd just gotten a call from a sister who was in the hospital, and she was involved in childbirth, and she was in great danger. So I asked him a couple of questions he didn't know the answer to. I said, how far are you from there? It was about 40 minutes. Okay, go there and call me back. The next morning, the newspaper said, woman dies after refusing blood. The husband of the woman said she knew exactly what she was doing when she refused a blood transfusion this week following complications from birth of a child. Members of Jehovah's Witnesses believe blood is sacred and should not be shared. She, 35 years old, died Wednesday in the intensive care unit after rejecting doctors' pleas for her to accept the transfusion to save her life. The doctors really tried to plead with me that without blood, she wasn't going to make it, said her husband. They just wanted me to know the risk, but at the same time, I know the Scripture, and I stand by my decision. The couple had celebrated their 14th anniversary Monday. As she died, her daughters kissed her on the cheek and told her goodbye. They told her how much they loved her and how much they were going to miss her. The sister didn't have to die. She was in the wrong hospital with the wrong doctor. She didn't have to die. Good help was available in another hospital. Unfortunately, this is not an unusual circumstance. Most of the tragic cases that come to our attention could have been prevented. So while she kept her faith, and And she did refuse blood. She'll be at God's law, and we're very happy with that. She's dead. The children have no mother, the father has no wife. Didn't have to happen. If you haven't got the point by now, you're hearing a commercial for filling out your girls' power of attorneys. Let me go on. An inactive sister gets into a fight with her husband, who's not a witness, is violent, and shoots her. And the neighbors hear it. And so they rush over, and the sister's bleeding, the husband has a gun, they call the police. The police arrive, the husband still has a gun, the police shoot the husband dead. Now, they rescue the sister, and they take her off to the hospital, still bleeding badly, and just as she loses consciousness, the doctor's asking her, because he finds she says she's a witness, he says, will you accept blood or blood fractions? And she says, no. Even though she's inactive for some time of congregation, she says, no. She went into a coma, and for 3 weeks, her blood count was incredibly low. Everyone was suspicious there'd be blood in her brain damage. They wanted to give her EPO, erythropoietin, which stimulates the red cells, the red bone marrow to produce red cells. But what had she told the doctor when he asked, will you accept blood or blood products? Currently, in this country, most EPO has albumin in it. But could the doctor give her now erythropoietin to stimulate her bone marrow? What had she told her? No. Very likely this would have helped her almost immediately. But instead, after 3 weeks, she finally came out of the coma. And when she was asked about it, she said, oh, it would have been fine. That's not an unusual situation. Make decisions. You have a worksheet now. You have the Kingdom Ministry insert. Make decisions. Don't put it off to say, I may be willing to talk about it when I'm not feeling well. Make the decisions now as to what you will accept. You don't have to understand pharmaceuticals. You merely have to understand the fractions. They don't change. Those fractions were listed in that sheet for you, and you can decide whether you'll accept all of them, whether there's 1 or 2 or whatever it is you won't accept. But be willing to explain why you won't accept those. So your doctor understands he's a reasonable patient, not just somebody who's decided to play it safe and they believe in the resurrection. There's much more to our religion than that, much more to our common sense. We can look at material and figure it out. The same with the medical procedures. Ascertain what it is that you want done with your own blood, and then state it. There aren't new fractions invented. Procedures basically are the same. There may be a little variance as to how one doctor does something or another. But it is possible to figure out what it is that you want now. And when you do that, get someone to help you. Be sure that your healthcare proxy is filled out in an acceptable manner. Oftentimes what is there is contradictory, and if it contradicts itself, the doctor will push it aside and will not be able to use it. Yes, he may not be able to give you what you would have otherwise accepted, and as a consequence, serious complications come in. I visited a hospital in the South some years ago, and when I'm in a hospital giving a presentation, I often ask, are there witnesses there? And I dug out to see them, and I went up to see this brother who had a prostatectomy, lost a lot of blood, and he's blind. Now, I've known the brother before. At a special assembly program, I met this man. He was an assembly overseer, intelligent man. He's blind. I said, what happened? Well, he bled out, and that was one of the reasons, or one of the results. Didn't they use self-salvage? He said, well, I didn't think to talk to the doctor about it. So the doctor wasn't able to use it when he's unconscious. That happens too often. We still get phone calls in the office. I got one earlier this week. The doctor out at the OR, the patient open on the table. And the doctor's saying, what can I do? I don't like those calls. Don't like them at all, because we're not able to speak for an unconscious patient. If their proxy is not made out and there's no one there to speak for them, it's a sad situation. I don't know what happened in her case, but I've had other cases, one particularly where the sister went in for a minor operation. I get a frantic call out of the operating room from the doctor. Can he use self-salvage? Now, can I say that? I couldn't say it. It made the doctor seriously hot, and the sister died right there. Now, it didn't have to be that way. Now, it's true, these are unusual cases, but they do happen. Many other cases where sickness is prolonged Difficulties result because we don't tell what we want. We don't make it clear. I would say it not to frighten you, but maybe I do say it to frighten you. Please fill out your health care proxies. If you need help, get help in order to do it. The hospital liaison committees have received training along that line. Elders have been given material at the schools they attend to be of assistance to you. On the whole, it's very nice to see the integrity of Jehovah's people. God's law on blood is seldom broken. And all the other laws, but God's law on blood is seldom broken. Even individuals who have been inactive, I've only handled cases up to 30 years inactive, who call the office desperate, they don't want blood, can they get help? And we're pleased to provide that kind of help. Sometimes it helps them make their way back to Jehovah's arrangement of things. But it's a law seldom broken, and it shouldn't be broken, but it's just one of the laws of God. So we dare not make a whole religion out of this one law. We figure out what it is, learn how to obey it, get on with the preaching work. It shouldn't be something that's just plaguing us, running around, and we have to understand every little detail of everything. No, we should be able to figure it out and get on with life. Let me give you a very interesting experience that actually happened here in Texas. It shows how even a young one can have faith in Jehovah and understand God's law. The hospital liaison committee wrote this. The patient in this experience is Armando, 6 years old. Do we have anybody 6 years old here? You don't have to do anything, but do I see any hands? 6 years of age? Anybody? Nobody owns up to being 6. Okay, one back there. Listen carefully, please. The patient in this experience is Armando, 6 years old. Armando's mother brought him to the hospital because the child had been quite sickly and anemic. An examination revealed that Armando was suffering from heart problems associated with atrial septal defect. The cardiologist said Armando's condition was serious and he needed immediate surgery. Armando's mother, whose husband had left her and was of little means and mother of 2, had only come to the hospital for the day and not anticipated staying. When our HLC received a call from one of the elders from the home congregation, we immediately responded, and she and Armando were given lodging at the Ronald McDonald House, and the wife of one of our HLC members supplied her with clothing and funds as she was not prepared for the stay. An HLC member visited with Armando and his mother that evening and found that the mother and son were very spiritual individuals. The first thing that Armando stated, remember how old he is? 6. First thing Armando stated, although looking a little frail but in a strong voice, was, you know what? Last Saturday I placed 46 magazines in 2 hours in the door-to-door ministry. To that I insert Spanish territory. But Armando's mother stated, why didn't you give the brother your presentation? He did, and it was just outstanding with gestures, questions, and voice inflection. This mother has really provided a lot of instruction and training for her children. Armando also related to us why there's so much wickedness in the world today and how God's kingdom is the only solution. He's quite articulate. It's obvious this child has received spiritual instruction from his mother and from being regularly present and benefiting from our meetings. We then discussed the seriousness of his operation and how it had to be performed without blood. They both were strong in their stand to uphold Jehovah's perfect law on blood. But Armando stated that he was a little scared. So we offered prayer to Jehovah as the operation was scheduled early next morning. The brother on the hospital liaison committee told Armando to be sure to pray to Jehovah right before the operation. The surgeon assured the sister that he would do the operation without blood, and they appreciated his attitude to accommodate the religious beliefs. Next morning resulted in problems. The anesthesiologist on the surgery team balked and did not want to cooperate, going round and round. But the surgery had to take place because of the boy's condition. Finally, the anesthesiologist agreed to go on with the surgery. All this time, Armando was in the prep room waiting for surgery. And this is where this experience really impacts our hearts in appreciation for little Armando's faith and Jehovah's loving care for his people. As Armando was wheeled into the operating room, he asked if he could pray out loud before the surgery. This is a very courageous little brother. With his penetrating voice and all the operating team present, Armando prayed that Jehovah give him the strength to survive the operation and no blood should be given to him. And can you imagine the operating team hearing Armando praying like that at 6 years of age? He was then put under. The operation was a success, and we all rejoiced in Armando's bloodless surgery. Recovery was fast for Armando. A few days in the ICU, and then he was placed in a private room. This experience ends with Armando's demonstration of his love for Jehovah in a unique way. During recovery, children are invited to participate in an art program where they can paint pictures of their liking, such as animals, birds, planes, etc. Armando chose to paint a large sign in Spanish that translated said the following: "Thank you, Jehovah, for helping me to be operated on without the use of blood." He then proceeded to put the huge sign on the door to his hospital room where all doctors, nurse, staff, and visitors could not miss the sign. Jehovah was never left out of the picture in this case. Armando's back home, still being confronted with a few health problems, but happily associating with the congregation. Wouldn't you like to have a 6-year-old like that in your congregation? I would. So many of our little brothers and sisters, older ones, are very faithful in doing Jehovah's will, obeying His law, and we appreciate that kind of integrity. And if we can appreciate it, think how Jehovah feels about it. Yes, we're confronted with problems in the world around us, but we should have the feeling of security that we can serve Jehovah and not be destroyed by the system of things by Satan. It is possible, but we must focus on the way that we have to go, the kind of leadership that we have. Years ago, in a religious work from the 17th century, in a book called Pilgrim's Progress, is the title of the book. There was a woodcut in it that always impressed me very much over the years. It's just got a picture of a path. It's got 2 lions, one on either side, and they're pretty rugged looking lions. And the point of the picture of the woodcut was that the Christian had to pass between these 2 lions. And they do look ferocious. The caption says, "Christian sees lions in his path." And today, similarly, we may look at what's out there, and this system is ferocious. It'll chew us up in a minute if we let it. But how do we know that it's possible to avoid that? Well, the next caption under this picture says, "The lions were chained, but he saw not the chains." And if you look closely, yes, the 2 lions are chained. So yes, they're fear-inspiring, but as long as we stay on the path, the lions can't hurt us. Similarly, Satan cannot destroy God's people. He cannot capture us, chew us up, ruin us, unless we let him. We know the way to go. We know that we have opportunity to follow it, and we're given constant direction that helps us along that line. Some of it we may find difficult to deal with, but we have to do it. All over the world, Jehovah's organization is growing, expanding, helping each other in order to serve Jehovah. Nancy and I just returned from 3 weeks in Africa. We were in Tanzania, Zanzibar, and Kenya. Beautiful publications there, similar to ours, but different. Here's one, the Road to Everlasting Life. See how appealing to an African that would be? See the road there going up toward Kilimanjaro. We found a number of publications over there designed to help the population understand Jehovah's message. That's the work that we've been given to do. And it's nice to see in the new 2007 yearbook, nice reports of what's been going on in 3 different countries, Reunion, Latvia, and South Africa. Thrilling stories in here. The Hospital Liaison Committee members have a copy they'll rent you tonight if you want to see an early copy. At Bethel, it's been a difficult year for some. Hundreds have been reassigned out of the Bethel family in order to expand our field work and to accommodate the changes in Bethel. We've got better equipment, better facilities, more consolidated, and as a consequence, some jobs just aren't there anymore. So a number have been reassigned. 200 out into the special pioneer work, 200 into the regular pioneer work, and the number invited to Bethel has considerably decreased. Has presented some challenges, but good reports are being received from congregations that have received these individuals, and also as they've visited themselves in the service, they've had some very good experiences. To get to know Jehovah's organization is vital. I think parents, if there's some way that you can help your young ones visit Bethel, very important for you to do so. You have to sell the dog or the cat, and I like animals. Whatever it takes. Help your young ones to see the visible part of Jehovah's organization. Help them to see what is being done in their behalf. Help them to understand what kind of people Jehovah's organization has, not just in this country, but in other countries. If you have opportunity to attend international conventions or special conventions like the ones that were just held in Europe this year, do your best to figure out what Jehovah's organization is like. It will strengthen your faith as you realize the same kind of faithful activities are going on all over the world, not just to read about them, but to hear about them. Jehovah's building into his people real quality. People who are willing to help each other, whatever the circumstances. At a convention just a couple of years ago, one brother was on a bus that stopped at a little congregation where I guess it wasn't even a congregation, just a group, and it was not long after they'd come out from under the Soviet Union's operation over there. A group of sisters, two sisters, came out the next morning to see the bus off from the hotel, and one sister brought to each person on the bus a flower and handed out a flower to each person on the bus. The next sister didn't have flowers. She was very poor, but she'd gone to her garden and she picked green peas, and she handed out one green pea pod to every person on the bus. Now, if that had been you, you'd still have the green pea pod, wouldn't you? I know I would. She wasn't afraid to show her love, her concern for her fellow brothers and sisters. That's the kind of organization that Jehovah's producing all around the world. Millions. You'll see the new figures in the, well, I guess they're in the Watchtower too, but they're described more completely here in the yearbook. It's a beautiful thing to be a part of Jehovah's organization in this time. It's nice to be here. Nice to be at Bethel too, but it's nice to get out and visit you. Anybody have a brief question or something in reference to what's happening? Okay, little brother.
Where is Bethel?
Pardon?
Where is Bethel?
Where is Bethel? Bethel is in Brooklyn, New York, Patterson, and Walk Hill, and there are Bethels all over the world. But the one I'm at is at Brooklyn, and we have other parts of it in Walk Hill and Patterson, all the same religion. Please, Brother.
How are things going in Russia? We know there are a lot of problems there with the government. How are things doing there?
You know, they seem to be doing well, even though we have bans and difficulties, especially in Moscow. The brothers are persevering. There are increases there. They're carrying on their work. Not have to change things, you know, as to how they meet, the numbers they meet, circumstances under which they meet, and the big buildings they have to buy for multiple congregations is kind of amazing, but the work is going on beautifully. Earlier in the year, Nancy and I went Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania, and how impressed we were with what has happened in just a few years since they've come out from under Soviet oppression. There are beautiful branches over there, awesome work going on, young people zealous out there. It was just a pleasure to see that from that part of the Soviet Union, what has been accomplished. Tremendous activity. Even in the foreign languages within those countries, sign language activity, it's alive.
Same question relative to France. We had the problems with the tax.
We heard Brother Splain just recently talk about that, and it's interesting that just a few years ago the special conventions were held in France, and he stated it's a turning point for the attitude of the brothers. The brothers are still working hard and carrying on. It's before the World Court. How they're going to handle this matter is not really known. It's a lot of money. It's tens of millions of dollars involved, and don't know exactly how it's all going to come out. Please, sister.
You mentioned the sister that died, but she didn't have to because if she had gone to a different hospital that would treat, medical alternatives. Do you know if we have to be taken to the hospital with EMS? Can you request to be taken to a particular hospital, even though it may be a little bit further?
Yes, you can. Now, sometimes the hospitals are under contract, the ambulances are under contract. They may deliver you to one hospital, but may have to take you to another. Laws vary. Some ambulances already know that Jehovah's Witnesses prefer to go to a certain hospital. Even in the helicopter situation, I was on the helicopter pad asking what was going on and how they treated matters. They take automatically a witness patient in serious condition to another hospital where they know. I was impressed. So you do have rights along that line. You can always dismiss it after transfer. they're not going to release somebody who's going to die in the process. Please, Bill.
Just wondering if there's any updates on the New Prairie and its production, and or any more downsizing for Brooklyn or movement of departments.
Well, that's a good question. The printery and the bindery are working hard. They really worked hard, and I think it's some material in here on what they did last year. The production of the Bible Teach book really stretched there. They had to go on overtime in order to get it out. But a lot of the work's being shifted around to other branches. Our printing, sometimes you see our forms are coming out from Canada because they didn't have quite as much to do. So that's being shifted all over the world, and gradually they're learning who can do what, how it can be done. So the facilities at this point are adequate for that. What other departments are going to move, we all wait to see. Any system.
How many branches have you visited?
I used to know. I don't know. Maybe 40? I don't know. Good number. Please, Ulla.
How old do you have to be to work at dental?
19 is the minimum age. It used to be 17 years ago, but it's 19 now. I don't think many 19-year-olds come in. We prefer them to have a little more experience in the pioneer field, but 19 is the minimum age. So how old are you? 11. So it'll happen fast. And if it doesn't happen in this system, we'll certainly need big medical afterward. Wow, these questions are awesome. This is.
Are there any other medical homes that are making the same kind of leaps and bounds that we're seeing here in the U.S.?
When you say leaps and bounds, tell me what you mean.
Well, the step up in printeries and the increase in production that we're doing with the printeries that we have now.
Yes, they're modifying their equipment, and as a consequence, even they're downsizing staff-wise, because there's better equipment, there's better allocation of who's doing what where. The big increases are spotty, and they often involve ethnic groups, but especially very big branches: Mexico, Germany, Brazil, Canada. Very big amount of property, and it's a tremendous job. And they buy all the paper for the world together now, and that's resulted in savings. So they're working in global purchasing now, that they're just constantly looking at ways to economize. I think we kind of used to feel we could do everything better in the world, so we tried to do everything. But we ate our chickens, we sold our cows, and we put the strawberries underground. All kinds of things that we realized that somebody else could do better than we could. And so there are changes taking place. Please go.
You had mentioned the Belgium office needing some assistance with the liaison committee. Now, the liaison committee there, are they traveling overseas and meeting with more of the brothers and trying to find doctors in these other areas to help out with them, or they're basically be on the same page as a liaison committee here in the U.S.?
Well, each branch has a hospital information desk that has similar equipment, similar goals, similar responsibility to what we have here. We communicate with them, yes. They receive training, so they have hospital liaison committees to do the same work as we do here. Often the equipment is not available, or the finances are not available to carry out the work that needs to be done, but basically it's the same. Please, Brother Street.
Well, put you on the spot, but we have a lot of young ones here that are pioneering and have the goal of pioneering, and so I wanted to ask, how long have you been in the full-time service? What kind of assignments have you and your wife had? And do you recommend that?
You had to do that. Short story, really. The circuit overseer took me down to the post office when I was 14 and said, see the sign that says join the Navy and see the world. He said, if you get into pioneer work, you'll see the world. Well, I come from a big family, 5 children. My father was disabled. It's true, my mother was a pioneer, but really didn't have any thoughts about great things of seeing the world. But I took the circuit overseer seriously with my family. So I started pioneering when I was 14. And that's a little over 50 years ago. And I think I've seen 84 countries and islands so far. So the old circuit overseer was right. Getting into pioneer work, yes, it's hard work, but there are other things that go along with it that make it very pleasant to think about. My wife's been in full-time service, I think 42 years now. 41, she says, 41 years. So we've enjoyed the full-time service. It's brought us into association with a whole lot of people we never would have met otherwise.